Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's the News, where the news is messy, the logic is questionable, the audacity is always fully stocked. This week, we've got recalls that shouldn't be happening, decisions that shouldn't be confusing, and stories that honestly feel like someone spun a wheel and said, let's try that. So, naturally, we're going to talk about it. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all the things. So, we're going to start off this week with a few recalls. If you happen to live in Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, or Wyoming and also love Einstein bagels, Schreiber Foods, a distributor for Einstein bagels, has voluntarily recalled multiple cases of cream cheese spread. The recall is due to a packaging mismatch where the almond containing cream cheese spread was placed into cups that were labeled plain cream cheese, which could be a major problem for those suffering from nut allergies. According to Schreiber Foods, the lids on the affected cups are labeled honey almond. However, the cups themselves are labeled plain. The FDA has warned that anyone with an allergy or severe sensitivity to almonds could face a serious or life threatening reaction. Next recall. Falcon Trading Company is recalling three black bean items because the products may contain pesticide residue. They've had numerous recalls over the last year because of potentially damaged products, foodborne illnesses, undeclared allergens, or potential bacteria. The three products being recalled are sold in bulk and are listed as the Black Organic 25-pound sack, the Chili Bean Blend Organic 15-pound box, the Soup Mix Organic 25-pound box. Falcon Trading Company has discovered through testing that the black beans they have purchased from a certified organic handler contained pesticide residue. This sounds like it may be a recurring issue, so why are they still buying from this quote unquote handler? On top of the fact that it's supposed to be organic, so there should be absolutely zero pesticides anywhere near the product. Is it just me, or are conspiracies about organic not actually being organic gaining some validity? Now to our last recall. The FDA has posted a recall alert for Vital Nutrients Allergy dietary supplements by Blue Root Health. There is a warning that customers with certain allergies may experience serious or life threatening allergies. The supplements may contain undeclared egg, hazelnut, and soy. You know, I completely understand human oversight, but I imagine that most companies nowadays have modernized technological infrastructure. So it completely baffles me that we have as many recalls as we tend to. Now, to a few other concerning topics related to things members of your family may ingest. Several states are considering legislation that would add folic acid to the corn masa flour used to make tortillas to tackle child health defects. I'll give you a moment to process that. California, of course, was the first state in January to require manufacturers to add folic acid, which is a key ingredient for infant health. Deficiencies in folic acid can lead to neural tube defects, including spina bifida and anencephaly, which can impact the brain and spinal cord. A similar law will be implemented in Alabama in June, and legislation is being considered or pending in Florida, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Oregon, while four other states, including Texas, Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, have expressed active interest. In 1998, the US required manufacturers to add folic acid into grain products, including breads, rice, flours, cornmeals, and cereals. But the requirements didn't include masa flour, which is used for many Latin American dishes. Now, I know that I may be kind of a hippie, but I think this is absolutely outrageous. We as a society, mostly in America, have gotten used to synthetic nutrients instead of getting the nutrients naturally. Because eating a chicken quesadilla or a ham and cheese sandwich tastes better than having a leafy green salad. Now, I'm a big fan of Barbara O'Neill, and she's spoken significantly about folic acid versus folate. And even if you don't care to hear her out, the bigger question is, why do we think that it's more optimal for our bodies to take synthetic nutrients instead of the natural nutrient itself? What sense does it make? People are out here taking vitamin C because they don't want to eat an orange or a pineapple or whatever other fruits and veggies you can get vitamin C from. I'll give you another piece of advice. Check your bread and other grains before buying them. You will notice many breads and other grain products have this strange ingredient listed first called enriched flour. If you get it bleached, you're really doing yourself and your family a disservice. But let's talk about that enriched word. What does it mean? It means that these companies are literally stripping grains of their natural vitamins, minerals, fibers, etc., and they replace the natural nutrients with synthetic ones. It's absolutely ludicrous, preposterous, insane, whatever you can come up with. What sense does it make to replace something that's natural with something that's fake? You are what you eat. And if you eat chemicals, what do you think is happening internally in your body? Your body is a petri dish of chemicals. And you wonder why people, quote unquote, need so much medication in this country. The people developing your medication, which are chemicals, are the same people that develop the chemical foods that react poorly within your body and then make you not feel good. And then you go to some jabroni doctor who has a piece of paper that claim that he's qualified. No offense to all doctors, because there are some doctors that do actually help people to resolve, not perpetuate their health issues. If you can tell, this is something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm not saying that you should be a hippie like me or whatever. You don't need to go crazy over labels, but you should be aware of the ingredients that's on the labels, because no matter how you feel about the FDA or big pharma, there's no way that you can disagree that it makes zero sense that naturally occurring nutrients should be stripped and replaced with chemical nutrients. So let's move on from this. In Broomfield, Colorado, police opened an investigation after hot dogs laced with methamphetamine, meth, were found in a family's yard. And at least two dogs were determined to have been affected. This case highlights the risk to pets from intentionally tainted food. Some family members told local news outlets that the first suspicious food item was a hot dog with a crystalline substance found on a patio in November. Another incident happened shortly after in December when a dog fell ill and tested positive for meth. An additional incident in March happened where a dog again fell ill after consuming an unknown item from said residence and subsequently tested positive for meth and MDMA. Police happen to believe that this is an isolated incident and a specific family is being targeted, but humans are so truly gifted at being inhumane. You're literally poisoning someone's dog because you don't like your neighbor. Like, make it make sense. And because life can't help but be any more ridiculous, Children in classrooms across several states in the country are playing a viral computer game called Five Nights at Epstein's. So, first of all, why do the computers at the schools not have harsher restrictions? And sure, you might hit me with well, not all kids know who Jeffrey Epstein was. And I would say it's 2026. 3 year olds have phones, and doing the math to figure out what year you need to input in an app to pretend you're 18 is made even easier by the calculator that's built into the phone. So, what's the point of this game? To pretend to be prey hiding from Jeffrey Epstein on his Pervy Island mansion. And the game invites users to play with the tagline, "Can you survive the night?" I honestly wish that I could say I'm surprised at this. Players of this game monitor surveillance cameras to avoid being caught. And then when Jeffrey finds you and approaches, players try to lure him away by playing the sounds of a children's voice. The states that this game is being played in are, of course, California, big surprise there, Utah, Nevada, and Texas. It's a little bit of a surprise. And parents and psychologists are concerned that the game trivializes his crimes and dehumanizes his victims. This is the biggest concern that parents have. I have some concerns. Why does your child think it's okay to play a game like this? Why is your child even interested in playing a game like this? Why does your child think it's entertaining to run away from a pedophile? Why does your child think it's okay to give another child to a pedophile so they can get away from said pedophile? I wasn't going to talk about this, but maybe it's necessary. People have been claiming that, Muslims are good because they aren't in the Epstein files. And other people quickly pointed out that it's because, well, having sex with children and doing many other unimaginable things to children is okay in many parts of Islam. So there's that. But what exactly do we think that games like this do? Do you really think that this was accidental? I don't know that this should be the biggest concern of a parent, but it does desensitize kids to becoming prey for pedophiles. I remember when I was young, people would say violent video games desensitize kids to violence. And kids nowadays are more violent than they ever have been, arguably. So now games in public schools are trying to desensitize kids so that they're comfortable with pedophiles. Seems like a great defense for homeschooling. Moving on. A 44-year-old Supreme Court decision is currently being challenged. This decision guarantees that undocumented children have access to free public education. If reversed, it sets the stage for a major constitutional fight over immigration, education, and the 14th Amendment, which grants citizenship to people born or naturalized in the United States. I recently actually heard that there may be efforts to make changes to the 14th Amendment due to the fact that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, frankly, if not more, pregnant women travel to the United States when they are around 7 or 8 months pregnant, simply so that they can have babies here. But this is another subject that we're not going to get into now. Back to the point. In 1982, the Supreme Court ruled that denying undocumented children access to education violates the Equal Protection Clause. It's been a cornerstone of public school policy nationwide. However, it is coming into question again. Of course, if successful, this will fundamentally reshape who is entitled to public education. States are being called to pass laws denying free public education to undocumented students because states have a legitimate interest in prioritizing limited taxpayer resources to citizens and lawful residents. The director of the Board Security and Immigration Center recently stated illegal aliens should not be eligible for federal, state, or local government benefits, including through their children, because the receipt of such benefits facilitates longer unlawful residence in the United States. An attorney with the National Immigration Law Center stated, "You would be asking school personnel to now act like their Department of Homeland Security officers, checking for immigration status, collecting and recording immigration status, and then reporting that information." All this to say, it will definitely cause major waves if this ends up being passed. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Last but not least, if you hadn't heard, in Wyoming, a 16-month-old kangaroo, Chesney, escaped a petting zoo by scaling an 8-foot fence. Apparently, the escape was not premeditated. A pack of stray dogs rushed Chesney's enclosure, sending him into a panic, and he therefore hopped the fence. Fortunately, friends, neighbors, and volunteers lined up to help find Chesney. The conventional efforts did not pull through, so the Midwest Aerial Drone Services used their heat sensing equipment and were able to track Chesney in the woods. After this breakthrough, Chesney ended up slipping away twice. And after jumping into a cold river, he disappeared from the drone's feed. The team began losing hope, but as soon as they decided to pack up and go home, Chesney reappeared seemingly out of nowhere and he started walking towards them. So, fortunately, Chesney made it home safe and sound. Let's go overseas. Somewhere in Europe, 12 tons of Kit Kat chocolate bars have gone missing. The shipment was meant to arrive in Poland ahead of the holiday rush. In case you are wondering, 12 tons amounts to 413,793,000 chocolate bars. 413,793 chocolate bars. And since the theft is just before Easter, there are concerns of shipment supply disruptions across Europe. KitKat reported that the truck loaded with a new range of bars left central Italy bound for Poland but never arrived, and they have not yet disclosed where along the route the truck disappeared. So, what does one do with 26,500 pounds of chocolate? Open a chocolate factory? Sell them on the dark web? Throw the most incredible party for your kids and their friends? As they say, first world problems. Another story out of Italy. In the city of Bari, which is southern Italy, police carried out a raid on an apartment. Why? A secret basement room was transformed into a reptile house harboring exotic and dangerous animals. Let's not forget, people, the mafia was started in Italy, and their only job is to get better at doing their job. Back to the secret basement. Anacondas, boa constrictors, and caiman. For those of you who don't know what a caiman is, it's basically a small crocodile. These creatures, among others, were found behind a false wall amid warnings that reptiles were being used by local criminals to intimidate their victims. The police recovered 2 green anacondas around 16 and a half feet long each and weighing 133 pounds. Obviously, I had to convert these measurements because in America, we're not evolved enough to know the metric system. They also found a 5-foot caiman. The caiman is a wild predator with extremely powerful jaws and potentially aggressive behavior. Imagine a crocodile pit bull baby. There was also an Asian water monitor, which is a giant lizard with huge claws and a perilous bite. In addition, police seized a yellow anaconda, a Bolivian anaconda, 4 Burmese pythons, each around 10 feet long, and 4 boa constrictors. Apparently, the man caring for these creatures has multiple criminal convictions and is currently untraceable. In a world where everything makes sense, I am absolutely living for this Marlon Brando, Samuel L. Jackson, love child plot twist. That's enough for Europe this week. So, Of course, many people have heard that Iran and the United States are apparently in talks to end this war. I don't know that I buy it. I think that Trump is going for the ultimate win here. Iran has demanded that all American bases in the Persian Gulf and Arabian Peninsula be closed. Official and binding guarantees to avoid future attacks, the end of Israeli attacks on Hezbollah, removal of all sanctions on Iran and its officials, compensation for war damages, and no restrictions on their missile program. There was no mention of the nuclear stuff. However, as we learned before, that doesn't mean that they don't plan on continuing trying to make a nuclear bomb. There are currently a lot of troubles in regards to the Strait of Hormuz. It's rumored that Trump is willing to end the war without opening the strait, but thousands of US troops are headed to the Middle East. So we'll see how long that story lasts, especially since there are also rumors that Daddy Trump wants to rename it the Strait of Trump. Now, people might say, see what a narcissist he is. And I could like maybe see that. And my argument is, and it's not a defense of Trump. However, what I will say is that, first of all, he's doing something that no one has ever and would probably ever dare to do. We already saw that Iran does, in fact, have missiles that could reach Europe. And they're so pressed to keep their missile programs. So that's obviously to make missiles that can reach further west. Because remember, they love to chant that thing, death to the West, death to America. So, one sure way to do that is with missiles before they get to their nuclear bomb. Second of all, in regards to Trump saying the strait should be named after him, because he's done something so monumental, he's like, hell yeah, I should get credit for this. And say what you want, but the man has a lot of conviction. And when one possesses such levels of confidence, when you make effort, you know that you deserve recognition for that effort. And honestly, outside of both of those things, I really just think that Trump says things so flippantly because he's incredibly titillated by people's melodramatic reactions to him. Anyways, Uganda has also claimed that if the war does not end soon, they would be more than happy to join the war on the side of Israel. So let's talk about our dear friends in the Gulf states who have to this day still refused to strike Iran despite two people being killed in Abu Dhabi from the debris of a missile shot from Iran. An aluminum factory in Bahrain was attacked by missiles from Iran. An aluminum factory in the UAE was attacked by missiles from Iran. Saudi Arabia released a statement that they had to intercept 10 missiles from Iran in a short span of time. Kuwait is also intercepting missiles from Iran. Over 1,100 missiles have been launched towards the Gulf states from Iran, and over 3,700 drones have been launched towards the Gulf states. If only we could count how many missiles and drones were launched towards Iran from the Gulf states. But that doesn't stop them from telling Trump that any deal with Iran cannot just end the war. It also needs to end their missile and drone capabilities. Like, duh. They also want Trump to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz is never again used as a tool of war. And then they have the audacity to tell Trump that any deal needs to guarantee the security of the Gulf states. Their nerve is longer than all the hijabs in the entire world tied together. What is more insulting is that they want a seat at the negotiation table when conversations are had with Iran. Clearly, they've gotten a little too hot under their head wraps. They don't lift a finger. They clearly are not aligned with the US or Israel, despite all of the signatures and stipulations of the Abraham Accords. And Kuwait is only softening their stance on Israel. This war may not end with Saudi Arabia signing the Abraham Accords because, frankly, if they were going to do it, they already would have. And at this point, I don't even want people that think that they're smart enough to use Israel and the US as their pawns in their Sunni Shia bullshit to sign any sort of agreement with Israel. The one thing that I will give them is that they have the balls to spit in the face of Israel and the US. Unlike other Gulf countries who smiled and signed contracts and then just left us out to dry, the one fortunate thing about this whole situation is that, in spite of the cowardice and disgrace of the Gulf states, we can guarantee one thing. They may think that we are tiring ourselves out, but everybody knows before they go to sleep at night, they pray to Hashem that Israel never puts them at the top of our list because pagers are the least of their concern. Iran might have tentacles, but Israel has angels. So let's move to Israel. First of all, let's talk about this silly drama with the Holy Sepulchre being closed on Palm Sunday. We do realize that there's a war going on. Like, we also realize that the Jews can't go to the Kotel during Passover, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but there probably wouldn't be a Palm Sunday without the whole Jew Passover situation. And I think that Palm Sunday is related to the Messiah who was supposed to bring eternal peace, but Israel was trying to protect the sight of your Messiah during a war with a regime that has done anything but bring peace. Anyways, the Muslims also can't go to their mosque. So, why exactly were people getting upset that Israel was doing its job to protect its citizens? I must be confused. Anyways, Bibi came out and was basically like, fine, go ahead, have your Palm Sunday service. Maybe it will bring eternal peace. For clarity, I embellished that last part. For those of you seeking eternal peace who would like to peacefully tack Bibi Avinu. Under missile attack from Iran, protests have erupted throughout the country against the war. Thousands of people demonstrated at 3 different rallies in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem. The protests were organized by the Peace Partnership Coalition, and they happened to also be protesting the government's proposed judicial reform. 18 total arrests were made by police across all 3 cities. Since Passover 2025, around 20,000 new families have made Aliyah. Many families came from Russia, the US, France, the UK, the Ukraine, Canada, and several other countries. Many immigrants moved to Tel Aviv, followed by Netanya, Jerusalem, and Haifa. I don't think that people truly understand how someone could move to a country in the middle of a war. Like, you don't see anybody moving back to the Ukraine or Russia right now. So it's completely an unfathomable thing. But I do believe that anyone who has the opportunity to visit Israel should definitely take the chance. And if you truly have a moment to witness the breath of Israel, there's a stillness and a fullness that simultaneously exists that has to be experienced. Last but not least, good news, the Knesset has approved the death penalty for terrorists. This bill mandates that any person who would intentionally kill someone as a part of an act of terrorism will be sentenced to death. The current outline stipulates that the execution will be hanging within 90 days of sentencing. Now, you might say, wow, Daniela, that's so cruel of you. And I would say, of Yikom. We engaged in several prisoner of war exchanges, and then somehow we got ourselves into this poo poo platter of a mess the first time we engaged in an exchange for prisoners, i.e., terrorists. Golda, the Rebbe, and many others have warned of the dangers of exchanging a small amount of innocent people for a disproportionate amount of terrorists. And I get the argument that, well, they're probably going to do something else to get caught, so they'll end up back in prison anyways, which is kind of short sighted. But, anyways, because Israel is always so inclined to give them back their terrorists, they have become even more emboldened to snatch people, living and dead, because their terrorists were just waiting days, weeks, months, years to get out and then to go back and then do more terrorist stuff. Some people need to be educated. Yahya Sinwar, the architect behind October 7th, was arrested in 1989. He sat happily in an Israeli prison, eating falafel, having life saving surgery where Israel paid to have his brain tumor removed, and then he was released in a prisoner exchange in 2011. For those of you who are mathematically challenged, like me, that's 22 years. So basically, when he got arrested, he was like, all right, I'm going to chill here for a cool minute, plot my little revenge, because he knew Israel eventually was going to let him go. Now, this is no longer going to happen. Terrorists are not going to be excited to sit in an Israeli prison because they now have a probationary period that ends in termination. This is a well needed, long overdue deterrence. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next one. Chag Pesach Sameach.